Cold shadows. The night grew quieter, the distant hum of the city muffled by the tension between Alice and Lilith. The air was thick with an unspoken understanding, a strange, desperate alliance between predator and prey, forged in a moment of madness and survival. Alice wiped her brow and glanced nervously at the wounds on Lilith's body, still unable to comprehend the surreal turn of events. "So how do we do this?" Alice asked, her voice shaky but determined. "I mean, if I'm giving you blood, how do we, make sure I don't end up dead?" Lilith, still clutching her wounds, smirked weakly. "Simple. I'll use a blade instead of my fangs. Less messy. And you'll have to trust me not to take more than I need." Alice raised an eyebrow, the skepticism clear in her eyes. "Trust you? You mean like how you trusted me when I shot you?" Lilith chuckled darkly, wincing as the pain surged through her. "Touché. But if I wanted you dead, I wouldn't be bargaining right now." Reluctantly, Alice nodded and walked over to the kitchen counter, grabbing a knife. She hesitated for a moment, glancing over her shoulder at Lilith, who was watching her intently. "You're not gonna go feral on me, right?" "I've got more self-control than you give me credit for," Lilith replied. "Now hurry up before I pass out from hunger." With a sigh, Alice made a small incision on her forearm, wincing as the blood began to trickle out. Lilith's eyes darkened as she inhaled the scent, her instincts flaring up. She bit down hard on her lip, forcing herself to remain calm. It took every ounce of restraint not to leap at Alice right then and there. Carefully, Alice held her arm out, and Lilith took a shallow bowl from the kitchen, collecting the blood. After a few moments, Alice pulled her arm back, watching in disbelief as Lilith drank from the bowl with an eerie grace, her pale skin gaining a slight flush as the blood began to revitalize her. "Better?" Alice asked almost nervously. Lilith set the bowl down, licking the remaining drops from her lips. She looked up at Alice with a predatory gleam, but there was no malice in her gaze now, just relief. "Much. You've got strong blood." Alice let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "So what now?" Lilith stood, her wounds already beginning to heal. "Now? We're stuck with each other at least for a while." Alice frowned, crossing her arms. "What do you mean, stuck? You made a deal with me, remember?" Lilith replied, stretching her arms. "You stay here, I get your blood. But it's more than that now. You've entered my world whether you like it or not. And trust me, it's not just me you have to worry about." Alice's eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" Lilith's expression darkened. "There are others like me. Vampires, hunters, creatures that you've only heard about in stories. Now that you've made contact with me, you're in the crosshairs. You're a part of this now." Alice blinked, the weight of Lilith's words sinking in. "Wait, are you saying I'm in danger?" Lilith shrugged. "You were in danger the moment you decided to pull that gun on me. But don't worry," she added with a smirk. "I'll protect you. As long as you keep your end of the deal." Alice couldn't believe what she was hearing. "This is insane. I should have just left you in that alley." "But you didn't," Lilith said, stepping closer to her. "And now we're bound by something stronger than just blood. Whether you like it or not, Alice, you're a part of this world. And trust me, you're going to need me if you want to survive." Alice stared at Lilith, the weight of the situation settling heavily on her shoulders. "What if I just walk out that door right now?" Lilith's smile faded, replaced by a cold seriousness. "You won't get far. They'll find you. And when they do, they won't be as kind as I am." A shiver ran down Alice's spine. "Who's they?" Lilith's eyes darkened again and she turned away, walking toward the window. "You'll find out soon enough. For now, get some rest. You'll need it." Alice stood frozen, unsure of what to do or say. She glanced at the door, contemplating running, but something deep down told her Lilith was right. She was in too deep now, and there was no turning back. Lilith's voice broke the silence. You're going to have to trust me, Alice. Whether you like it or not, I'm your best shot at staying alive. Alice clenched her fists, frustration boiling inside her. Fine, she muttered. But don't think for a second that I trust you. Lilith smiled faintly, her back still turned. We'll see. And with that, the uneasy alliance between the hunter and the hunted began, bound by blood and shadow. Neither of them knew what awaited them in the nights to come, but one thing was certain: they would need each other more than either was willing to admit. The tension in the air lingered as Alice sat on the edge of Lilith's worn leather couch, her arms crossed. She could still feel the sting of the fresh cut on her arm, and her thoughts raced with disbelief. What the hell had she gotten herself into? This wasn't just a bad night anymore. This was a whole new world, one she wasn't prepared for. Lilith, leaning against the window, seemed to sense her unease. Her gaze swept over the city outside, watching the flickering streetlights and distant shadows move beneath them. You should try to sleep, Lilith said without turning around. Things will get more complicated by morning. Alice scoffed, shaking her head. Complicated? I just gave my blood to a vampire who tried to kill me. It doesn't get more complicated than that. Lilith chuckled softly, the sound low and dark. You're stubborn. I like that. But trust me, Alice, this is just the beginning. Alice was about to retort when a faint knock echoed through the apartment door. She stiffened immediately, her hand instinctively reaching for her side where her gun had been holstered earlier. Lilith straightened up, her eyes narrowing. She moved silently toward the door, her movements graceful but predatory, like a wolf stalking its prey. Expecting company? Alice whispered, her voice tense. Lilith shook her head slightly, signaling for Alice to stay quiet. She pressed her ear against the door for a moment, listening. Another knock came, louder this time. Whoever it was wasn't being subtle. Lilith glanced back at Alice, her face grim. Stay back. Without another word, Lilith yanked the door open, revealing a tall figure standing in the dimly lit hallway. The man was dressed in a long coat, his face mostly hidden beneath the shadow of a hood. His eyes glowed faintly red, and when he smiled, his sharp fangs glinted in the light. Lilith, the man greeted, his voice cold and smooth. It's been a while. Galen, Lilith replied, her tone flat. What do you want? Galen's eyes flicked past Lilith and landed on Alice, who was still seated on the couch. He raised an eyebrow, his smirk widening. Ah, I see you've made a new friend. Lilith stepped in front of him, blocking his view. She's none of your concern. Why are you here? Galen chuckled, taking a step forward. Everything that happens in this city is my concern, Lilith, especially when it involves you. Alice could feel the tension rising between them. Whoever this guy was, he clearly wasn't here for a friendly chat. She could tell from the way Lilith's body had tensed that Galen was dangerous, maybe even more dangerous than Lilith herself. What do you want, Galen? Lilith repeated, her voice sharp. Galen sighed dramatically, running a hand through his slicked back hair. Word on the street is you've been laying low. Some of the others are concerned. You haven't fed in months, and now I hear you've gotten yourself tangled up with a human. His eyes flicked to Alice again. I'm just here to see if the rumors are true. Lilith's jaw tightened. The rumors are none of your business. Leave. Galen's smirk faltered slightly, and his red eyes glinted with irritation. Careful, Lilith. You're already on thin ice with the council. They don't take kindly to rule breakers. Alice's heart pounded in her chest. Council? What the hell is going on here? She wanted to ask a million questions, but the intensity of the moment kept her silent. Lilith took a step forward, her expression cold and unyielding. I'm not breaking any rules. Now get out before I make you. For a moment Galen didn't move, the two vampires staring each other down in a silent battle of wills. Then with a sigh Galen stepped back, raising his hands in mock surrender. Fine, fine. But don't say I didn't warn you. You've been out of the game too long, Lilith. You're weak, vulnerable. The council won't overlook that much longer. Lilith didn't respond, her gaze burning into him as he turned and walked down the hallway, disappearing into the shadows. Only when the echo of his footsteps faded did she shut the door, locking it tightly. Alice let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Who the hell was that? Lilith leaned against the door, rubbing her temples. Galen. A vampire enforcer, if you will. He works for the council. Our little governing body, keeping tabs on vampires like me. And he just shows up to check on you? Alice asked, her voice laced with skepticism. Something like that, Lilith muttered, walking back to the couch. The council monitors those of us who don't follow the rules. And feeding regularly is one of their rules. Alice shook her head. Wait, so you haven't been feeding, and now this council's on your case because of it? Why? Lilith sighed, sitting down beside Alice. It's not as simple as feeding. The more I take from humans, the more I become like them, the weaker I get. I've been trying to resist it to stay stronger. But it's complicated. Alice frowned. So what does that mean for me? Are these enforcers going to come after me too? Lilith met Alice's eyes, her expression serious. If Galen told the council about you, then yes. They don't take kindly to humans getting involved in our world. But I'll handle it. You just need to stick close and trust me. Alice leaned back, her head spinning. This just keeps getting better. Lilith gave her a small, weary smile. Welcome to my life.